Hmm? Thank you, Galeria.
Okay. Hari Om.
Hari Om, sir.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, everybody.
Hari Om.
Good morning, Hari Om.
Let's start. Om. Om. Sahana Bhavatu. Sahanau Bhunaktu. Sahaviryam Karavavahai. तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Hare Om. Okay, so we'll continue from where we left off. We started last class chapter 3, Life, Its Course, in which we began to discuss the concept of receipt, reaction, and response. The individual mechanism of receipt, reaction, and response. In the course of life, cause life is nothing but a stream of experiences. An experience constitutes the experiencer and what is being experienced. So there are two variables out here: who is experiencing and what is being experienced. And you have to address, understand, assess, accept, manage both the experiencer and the experienced. People fail to understand what is being experienced and the nature of it, and even more, people fail to understand who is experiencing the process of an individual in experience and how to go about improving that. So as far as the individual is concerned, as far as the experiencer is concerned, in order to begin to address the experiencer, he talked about the three transactions of life: receipt of stimuli, reaction within, and response back into the world. There were a lot of questions, and I'm sure there'll be many more, so feel free to ask, either by raising your hand or by posting it on the comments. But I'll spend a couple of minutes recapping that concept. See, first of all, what kind of stimuli are you receiving? The world itself presents a whole variety of stimuli, and based on your desires within, your mind itself pushes you for a certain kind of stimuli. Your mind pushes you for certain kind of experiences. You want to go to certain places, you want to do certain things based on your mind's desire. So the kind of stimuli you are exposed to has a lot to do with what your mind actually desires. An alcoholic will be driven to a bar. Sorry to use this example, but it drives home the point. Talking about the helplessness of a desire to drive you to a certain stimulus. So, what kind of stimuli are you exposing yourself to? If you have a very strong desire for something within you, you will take yourself there. You will take yourself to that stimuli, and there is almost no chance of you controlling the reaction. You'll be on autopilot. You'll only realize after the storm has passed, after the storm of the desire has passed, you'll only realize what you have done. So when there's strong desires within you, you'll have little control, almost no control over your reaction. Best thing you can do is avoid. Avoid receipt. Now you can't stay like this. This is not a permanent solution. This is not a permanent solution. But initially, in the beginning, when you have no other solution to the uncontrolled flow of thought within you, you have to control it externally. Thereafter, as he says quite rightly, that the only way to control the reaction is through knowledge and understanding. I'm going to share my screen. The only way to control the reaction is through knowledge and understanding. I'm going to highlight that because it's important. Oops. The permanent control of your reaction is only achieved through knowledge and understanding, through a permanent rehabilitation of your mind and intellect. So a regulation of your external environment is the first thing, but it's a temporary solution. A more permanent solution is only when you're able to manage the reaction that's going in within. So that's the concept of an ashram. You know, the word ashram means refuge. The word ashram means refuge. It is an environment which protects you. So it's a stimuli which protects you. It's a place that protects you from negative stimuli. It's a place that provides you positive stimuli in the direction of your growth. That's not a permanent solution. You can't permanently park yourself in an ashram. You can't permanently park yourself in an ashram. It's not possible. It's not going to be helpful for you also. But as an initial, as a temporary solution, as a temporary strategy, you have to find a place where you can protect yourself from influences which otherwise will overtake you, which will make you which will make you do things you don't want to do. In chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, after all the highest knowledge Lord Krishna has given, Arjuna asks perhaps the most intelligent question. Arjuna asks perhaps his most intelligent question. He says, by what force does man commit sin? By what force does man commit sin, even knowing that he shouldn't be doing it? Sin means an action you come to regret. Sin means something you know within you shouldn't do, but you end up doing it. Means going against your own better understanding. And we do it every day. We do it every day. To what extent are we able to maintain the discipline we choose for ourselves? To what extent are we able to maintain the kind of regulation and moderation and poise we choose for ourselves? It's because anything the world attracts us with, any stimuli the world attracts us with, we get swept away. And the world is only becoming more and more challenging. The press button comforts. Before you know it, you've spent hours and hours. You wiled it away on something meaningless. So the world and its stimuli are only getting more enchanting. The only permanent solution is to rehabilitate your mind and intellect through knowledge and understanding. And for that, you may need temporary refuge. You may need to suppress the kind of things you expose yourself to, but that's not a permanent solution. You can't park yourself permanently in an ashram. You have to come out. That's why the idea of an ashram, in fact, the course of study, say for example, someone like me undertook, it's a 3-year program. It's 3 years of constant bombarding of knowledge. It's constant bombardment with the hope that one is able to fortify the reaction within. So that once you step out into the world and the various stimuli you experience, you're able to choose appropriately, you're able to react appropriately. Hmm. So I come back to the topic. The kind of reaction you'll have within is completely dependent on the nature and the strength of the desire. Hmm. If you don't have a desire, you won't react. The stimuli will be in front of you. The stimuli will be in front of you. If you don't have a desire, you won't react. Hmm. Someone who's happily vegetarian, you take them in front of KFC. No reaction. Why? No desire. Hmm. Someone who's grown and matured, achieved financial freedom a long time ago, you take them in front of a credit card stall. No response. You take a 25-year-old in front of a credit card stall with all the options and schemes and this and that. Lot of a reaction. There'll be there'll be a strong reaction. There'll be a lot of interest. So the kind of reaction you give to any stimuli depends entirely on the nature of the desire you have and its strength. Hmm. I still remember growing up, my father always wanted me to read the business pages of a newspaper. Huh? No interest. No interest. Immediately when the newspaper comes, which page do you open? Sports page. So I distinctly remember that day when, uh, by my own volition, by my own discretion, I opened the business page because there was an interest. So different kinds of desires also manifest in you at different stages of life. Huh? They say the technical term is vasanas manifest in a conducive environment. So at a different stage, a different kind of desire will manifest in you. If that desire is not manifesting, you may have it, but it's dormant. If it's not, so if that desire is either not in you or it's not manifest in you, there'll be no reaction. The moment the desires manifest, there'll be a reaction, right? So in trying to address these transactions and perfect these transactions, you have to understand the kind of receipt you'll be attracted to, the kind of reaction you will be helplessly having, has all to do with what is within. What is the kind of thought flow? What is the kind of desire you entertain within? And until and unless you learn how to moderate, regulate your desires, there's no way you'll be able to control receipt, reaction, and response. When you have a strong mind and intellect, an intellect with the higher values of life, an intellect with the clear understanding of the mechanics of life, an intellect with the clear understanding of the nature of things and beings, that's the knowledge we're trying to provide. Then alone will that intellect be able to take things in perspective. Then alone will that intellect be able to manage the desires of the mind, control the receipt, optimize the reaction, and give the best kind of response back. Understand, the response you give back into the world, the response you give back into the world is going to become stimuli for the next person, isn't it? So it's a cycle. The response you give into the world is going to become the stimuli for the next person. The response you give is actually a receipt for another. So that's how the cycle keeps flowing. So when you're giving a response, your mind, intellect has to assess what kind of reaction it may have. You have to assess what kind of reaction will be appropriate. You have to assess the situation, who you are responding to, when you are responding, how you are responding. So perfecting these transactions of life, you ensure a happy experience, a peaceful experience. He says, wherever you are, whatever you do, you must perfect these transactions. Every human being is well equipped to set things right for his spiritual evolution. This is an incredible line, an incredible assertion. You, in whatever condition, position you are well equipped. Oops, sorry. How do I turn this off? Hide button. You, wherever you are, however you are well equipped to take your spiritual evolution in your hands. And this is spiritual evolution. The perfection of these inner transactions is spiritual evolution. Your present nature is best suited for your development. Don't look at another person and how far ahead they are on the journey. Don't look at another person and think about how far behind they are. Focus on your own development and understand your present nature is best suited for your development. Who you are, where you are, don't complain. I'm helpless. No, you're not. Whatever challenges you have within you itself are best suited for your development. Make good use of your buddhi, of your mind. You have two wonderful equipments, and discover that peace and happiness lies in perfecting these inner transactions. So Anubhav has a question. He says, is the rehabilitation of mind and intellect essentially to reach a stage where, irrespective of the stimuli, your reaction is positive? Or is it the idea to dilute our strong desires altogether? Good question. First of all, what do you mean by a positive reaction?
You use the word optimize your reaction. Optimize. So I think I would have used that word also.
Yeah, we're not so much talking about positive or negative because that's relative. We're not talking necessarily about a moral science out here uh, yet, but you know, perhaps a reaction which is beneficial to you towards your goals. Yes, that could be one level of looking at it. Yes, that is one level of goal. And if you have a broader spiritual purpose, see, right now we're talking at a very introductory level about the individual mechanism, right? We're talking at a very secular level, if I may say, right? There's no concept of so-called spiritual evolution and enlightenment out here that we are bringing into the picture, because the beauty of this subject is it meets you where you are, right? So even someone with no concept of this can start from where they are and implement this. But if in the process you develop a deeper spiritual purpose, then yes, the idea of the rehabilitation of the mind is certainly to dilute, regulate, moderate, and eliminate desires. See, even from a mundane perspective, forget spirituality. If you want to be happy, if you want to be in a position of peace and contentment, you have to learn how to regulate and moderate your desires. By regulate and moderate, we don't mean suppress. By regulate and moderate, we don't mean uh, um, choose less. There's no quantum we're talking about. In fact, those who achieve the most in life, they, for them, sky is the limit, right? So we're not talking about a necessarily a when you say regulate and moderate, we're not talking about limiting your desires. We're talking about how you manage them, right? How you learn to put it in perspective, how you manage to be objective in the process of pursuing them. Thereafter, as you develop a more refined spiritual vision, you will realize a lot of the things you're chasing are pointless, right? That's a totally different uh, gear of spirituality. So this concept of receipt, reaction, response appeals both to the secular and the spiritual. the mundane and the spiritual. So it depends on who you're talking to, you know. But certainly, if you're talking to someone on the spiritual journey, yes, the purpose of rehabilitation of the mind and intellect certainly leads to dilution, decrease in the quantity of desires, improvement in the quality of desires. Ultimately, to a point where you have only one desire: to know the truth. Only one desire: to realize the self. It's called mumukshatva, the desire for liberation. Hmm? Okay, but very few people are look at the world this way. Hmm? Very few people acknowledge that happiness and contentment actually lies in this inner process of perfecting these transactions. Instead, they have a very extrovert idea of happiness. So therefore, he continues in um, in this section. I'm going to try to pull out that section.
The
part.
entity of actions executed by your body. Wherever you are, whatever you be, you must perfect the above three transactions in life. Every human being is well equipped to set things right for his spiritual evolution. Your present nature is best suited for your development. Realize that. Make good use of your faculties to discover the peace and happiness within you. The ignorant masses, however, are not aware of their inherent power to steer their way to perfection. Instead, they boast over their mundane achievements or bemoan their failings in life. They suffer from either a superiority or an inferiority complex. You must be careful not to develop either complex. No one is superior or inferior. Everyone has a distinct part to play in this world. So have you. Recognize your part and play it well. Thus would you progress to perfection.
So it's a totally different way of looking at the world. And what he laments is very few people look at success, perfection, happiness, contentment from the lens of this individual mechanism, from the lens of perfecting receipt, reaction, response. Instead, the idea of success, the idea of perfection, the idea of happiness is very much outward. And not only is it an outward success, but in how it is perceived by others. And that's an endless pit. It's an endless pit. People spend their entire lives living up to the expectations of others or wanting to prove something to others, developing complexes: how much another person has achieved, how little I have achieved, or how much I have achieved versus how little another person has achieved. You develop arrogance or envy one way or the other, and you make a mess of it. It's an endless pit. So he says, be careful, don't fall into either complex. Don't fall into either complex.
The American poet, philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson has well brought out the problem of complexes in human beings in his poem, The Mountain and the Squirrel. The poem depicts a mountain carrying forests on his back but cannot crack a nut, whereas a squirrel that can crack a nut cannot carry forests. Therefore, none is superior or inferior in this world. All creatures serve as spokes in the wheel of life. God merely acts as the hub holding everything together. The poem. The
So this is a beautiful poem. It's very small. It's very short. Um, again, something probably we read in middle school or something. But it's incredible how how permanent these lessons are. So this poem beautifully draws out the problem with that sense of inferiority or superiority complex. And what he's trying to drive home the point is everybody has a distinct and different part to play in the world. Some have a larger expression, some have a smaller expression. See, when we say something like this, people think, oh, we're asking you to limit your expression. We're asking you to not have too many desires. No, that's not what we're saying. You could be the mountain that has the larger expression. You could be the squirrel who has a small expression. You could be, based on your capacity, based on your ability, based on your own desires and interests in life, be made for something big and grand. Or you could be someone who is just a very private person, right? Who plays their small role. In fact, some would argue the best of people are those who have gone unknown, invisible, invisible. So, not talking so much about how big or small your life should be or your expression in life should be, but getting over that sense of seeking validation externally or wanting to prove a point externally, appear great in the eyes of the world. There's no fulfillment in that. Rather, there's a lot of peace and clarity in understanding your role, your part. It may be small, it may be big, and doing it well, doing it beautifully. The poem.
Mountain and the squirrel. The mountain and the squirrel had a quarrel, and the former called the latter little prig. One replied, "You are doubtless very big, but all sorts of things and weather must be taken in together to make a year and a sphere. And I think it no disgrace to occupy my place. If I'm not so large as you, you're not so small as I, and not half so spry. I'll not deny you make a pretty squirrel track. Talents differ. All is well and wisely put. If I cannot carry forests on my back, neither can you crack a nut."
Some of you may be confused by this language. It's 18th century. It's 18th century.
अरे क्रैश नहीं होता भैया मैं तो अरे उधर ना ट्रैफिक होता है, बहुत सारा ट्रैफिक यहाँ आ रहा होता है उल्टा सुबह जो मेन रोड का होता है ना, उनका ये छोटा पड़ता है भैया.
Where's that sound coming from? Everybody's on mute. Okay. So, a lot of you may be wondering, what is this language? This is 18th century American English. Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of the most incredible philosophers of America at that time. He had, I guess, his student, and thereafter his contemporary was Henry David Thoreau. So, and collectively, the group of Emerson and a couple of other philosophers, they studied the Bhagavad Gita. They had deep regard for the Bhagavad Gita, and they call themselves the transcendentalists. So if you're interested in literature and if you're interested in philosophy in general and are much of a reader, do look up Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, the famous book, The Pond of Thoreau. It was a good read. So he writes this in American English, which may be confusing to us sitting on this side of the world. But but for our purpose, Swamiji has italicized the lines that drive home the point. He's italicized these points. Talents differ, all is well and wisely put. Talents differ. Everybody has different talents, different abilities. Some the world appreciates and makes a noise about. Many the world doesn't even see, takes for granted. But talents differ. All is well and wisely put. Hmm? Who's the wise person who has put it? God knows. But it's all well and wisely put. Means there's a design to this cosmos, there's a design to this creation, and you're part of that design. At some point, you have to acknowledge it. If you may not be able to understand it or accept it immediately, but you have to acknowledge it. There's something beautiful functioning around us at all points of time. The world is an incredible phenomenon, and how things are put together, how things are designed, how things are put together, how things are designed. It's remarkable. In the external world, we generally feel a sense of awe when we see an incredible sight in front of us. When we visit a mountain, when we see a snow-capped peak, when we see an incredible waterfall, when we see a grand expression of nature, that's when we feel, or we see a beautiful forest. I still remember when I'd gone to New Zealand, and the first step I took in the forest in New Zealand, because whatever forest we visited out here, we barely visited any forests, especially in India. But when I went to New Zealand and we visited the forest, the ground was spongy. The ground was spongy. And naturally, a forest will develop that kind of a forest that is not sort of has much habitation, especially of humans. Basically, layers and layers of mulch will just develop that spongy, forest floor. Incredible. There's a biologist who spent an entire year studying just 1 square foot of soil. There's a biologist who spent an entire year studying just 1 square foot of soil. Either you think they're crack or you think they're incredible. Either way, either way, it's something that makes you pay attention. There's so much. This world is incredible. What is designing it? What is the power behind its design? See, the moment we see something that's beautifully organized or beautifully created, something that is perfect in its design, we think, oh, who has designed it? What has designed it? We appreciate the designer behind it. You see a beautiful machine, you see a wonderful painting. You appreciate what has gone behind that. If you're into the sciences, you'll see a beautiful experiment. You think, oh my God, who designed that experiment? So wherever you see something that is beautifully put together, the thought comes, what's behind this? So all is well and wisely put. Things seem to be perfectly coordinated, and you're just a part of the whole. You're a spoke in the wheel. You're part of it. You're part of this design. To have the thought of what is the power behind this design, to have that spirit of inquiry, what is the unseen hand behind this magnificent expression behind this magnificent world. That is devotion. That is bhakti. Bhakti is an awareness of the splash of divinity around you. So, the extent to which you have this awareness, to the extent to which you have this understanding, to that extent, you will not have a superiority or an inferiority complex. To that extent, you will have you will be reconciled with the fact that everybody has a role to play. You'll understand that and you'll accept that gracefully. I'm only trying to highlight what is packed into this line. Talents differ. All is well and wisely put. To come and to come to accept that line, you have to have this deep understanding of life. You have to build that deep understanding of life. All is well and wisely put. If I cannot crack forests on my back, you arrogantly tell me what you can do. The squirrel is telling the tree, you can carry forests on your back. So you're telling me I can't do that? You're having this arrogance. Look, can you crack a nut? Can the mountain crack a nut? So the beauty of the forest is its ability to carry the beauty of the mountain is its ability to carry forests on the back. The beauty of a squirrel is its ability to crack a nut. Everyone has their role to play. Play your part gracefully. The wisdom of the squirrel made it realize talents differ. Everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses. All is well and wisely put. When you have that insight, you will accept this. You will not be perturbed by it. You will not be disturbed by it. So, he's inviting you to shift your approach towards peace and happiness. Peace and happiness lies not so much in outward achievement, rather in this inner perfection of receipt, reaction, response. Perfect these transactions and you'll have a happy life. And he continues, nature of the world. So having delved into the individual mechanism, the experiencer, he now goes to the experienced. He now goes to the world that we are experiencing. In order to address our experience, we have to address both the experiencer and what is being experienced. So what is the nature of the world that we are experiencing? He continues.
Nature of the world. The world is ever in a flux of change. The year passes through spring, summer, autumn, winter. The day through morning, noon, evening, night. Energy through mechanical, electrical, sonic, magnetic. The physical body changes through childhood, youth, adulthood, old age. So do the mind and intellect change. Nothing in the world remains static. Change or perish seems to be the law of nature. How can this ever-changing world cater to individual demands? Yet you expect in vain for the world to fit into your mental pattern, and your desires remain unfulfilled. Your mind becomes agitated. You blame the world for your discontentment. You must understand the world is an admixture of pleasure and pain. Observe the play of pleasure and pain to become instrument. Use these contrasting experiences to delve deep into your inner personality. Search within and discover the seat of true peace and happiness.
So the first thing about the world that he says is that the world is a flux of change. Impermanence is the very essence of the world. If you're sitting back and expecting that the state you are in, the condition you are in, is going to remain that way, is going to remain permanently, you are mistaken and you are in for a surprise. The problem with the mind is when it is elated, it feels that state will last forever and it becomes complacent. When it is in a state of depression, when it is going through a negative experience, it thinks that will last forever and it becomes overwhelmed. Winter will give way to summer, to spring, and then summer. Winter will give way to spring and then summer. Summer will gradually lead to fall and then winter. So, change is the essential phenomenon of life. You have to understand that you have to become reconciled with impermanence. You either reconcile yourself through knowledge or through experience. You either understand this through knowledge by observing the world around you, by seeing others going through a variety of changes in their life. But very few people actually learn that way. Most of us learn only through experience, by going through the ups and downs. The idea of a class like this is to tilt the scales a little bit, make you learn more through knowledge than through experience. That's about it. There's a saying, I think it's a Romanian proverb. It says, the wise learn through the experience of others. The wise learn from the experience of others, fools from their own. The wise learn from the experience of others, fools from their own. So when I heard that, I thought there's another class of people as well, right? Those who don't learn from their experience. I remember thinking to myself, I hope I'm at least a fool. You should all say, I hope we're at least fools, that we learn from our own experience. Because there are a class of people who don't learn from their own experience either. So, wise learn from the experience of others. He says, observe the play of pleasure and pain to become introvert. It's your opportunity to see the changes either in the lives of others or in yourself, in your own life, seeing the variety of experiences. It's an opportunity to go within. It's an opportunity to understand that lasting fulfillment is not in the world. Once again, in the theme of the scriptures, he's giving the highest knowledge at the very beginning. The highest knowledge at the very beginning. The ultimate understanding is an awareness that whatever the world offers is not going to satiate you. You have to go within. So he's inviting us to think about that. Observe the play of pleasure and pain. Observe the highs and lows. To an introvert, to contemplate upon the real phenomenon of happiness. The rare person does that. Most of us are stuck chasing pleasure and avoiding pain. And when we are experiencing pleasure, we either get carried away in it or we cling to it. Or when we are in pain, we are unable to think. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. See, when someone is experiencing pain, it's very difficult for them to gain knowledge. Their mind is not in a position to gain knowledge. The irony is, most people come to this subject when they are in pain. But it's important to understand, especially if you want to teach this subject, that is not the time to share the knowledge with them. When someone is going through a painful experience, you have to let time play its part in helping them come back to a place where they can receive knowledge. Hmm? So you have to use various psychological techniques to keep them interested, but not necessarily burden them with knowledge. But the paradox is when someone is lost in pleasure, they're not interested in knowledge. Uh, so most people come to this subject when they're in pain, but the moment they're in pleasure, they forget about it. They're not interested in this anymore. They get complacent. So he says, observe the play of pleasure and pain. Step aside from it to become introvert. Understand the nature of these fluctuating experiences.
The world is sometimes cruel, only to be kind. Realize that. Do not abuse the plan of nature. Do not fall a prey to cynicism or pessimism in life. Instead, look at the world constructively. Does not a sportsman improve his game with strong opposition? Does not trade flourish with stiff competition? Does not a government stabilize with healthy coalition? Thus, make good use of the apparent antagonism of nature to rise to greater heights of perfection.
We'll conclude with this thought. But he's making a very important point, whether spiritual or secular, especially in the world we live in today. Hmm? Do not fall a prey to cynicism or pessimism in life. Look at it constructively. Do not look at the world, and people get into this mindset that the world has been unfair to me. I'm the one who is facing all these difficulties. I'm the one who is struggling. Other people have it easier. Others have it easier. Everybody is going through something or the other. They just don't show it. So don't become that person who sits back and always complains. We're not saying whatever you're going through is not a challenge. We're not saying that it's not difficult. But there's a fine line between feeling that sense of pain and then going ahead to become a cynic, a pessimist. Rather, use any of these challenges that life presents you as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to flourish. We're not here to necessarily change the world and perfect the world. Swami Ramatirtha says, perfecting the world is like straightening a dog's tail. Perfecting the world is like straightening a dog's tail. What will happen? You straighten it, again it'll bend. You straighten it, again it'll bend. Oppressors will become oppressed, oppressed will become oppressors. It's the way of the world. So all we're saying is that don't get lost in a spiral of pessimism. Whatever, in fact, most people achieve a lot when they go through adversity. So don't look at adversity and become pessimistic, cynical. Rather, use it as an opportunity to grow. Use it an opportunity to rise above. Use it as an opportunity to become truly independent. So he says, make good use of the apparent antagonism of nature to rise to greater heights of perfection. With that thought, we'll conclude today, and I'm happy to take up any questions if there are.
Can I have the name of the book you had suggested?
Uh, I wasn't necessarily suggesting it, but the book is called The Pond by Henry David Thoreau.
Thank you.
It's about it's largely about his time and experiences and his state of mind while living in solitude, um, away from the town, by the pond in the forest. Mm. So it's a beautiful poem. It's a beautiful book.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Uddhavji, should I say one line?
Please.
See, Sukh, we say, is a prasad of God,
Hmm.
but Dukkha is a Mahaprasad of a God,
Hmm.
because it gives us an opportunity to overcome it. Once we overcome it, then we are become the winner, and the joy which we get out of winning that obstacle and whatever it is, the dukkha, and making it a sukha, is the real player. So that is why they say sukh is the prasad of God. No doubt, we get pleasure from the sukha, but dukh also we should look with a optimism to overcome it and then get a pleasure out of it. This is my opinion.
Indeed.
I'm
Yes,
just adding,
you have
not.
Rinuji, you have a question?
No, I don't have.
No, Rinuji. Yeah, thank you, Omji. Yes,
No, I asked you the,
hand was up.
and I, right through, I was just remembering what you had said. This too shall pass.
Hmm.
You know, when you were talking about the ups and downs. That was it.
Since you mentioned this, see, people think of this too shall pass only when they're going through a negative experience. Hmm? The truly philosophical person thinks of this too shall pass even when they're going through a positive experience, even when they're going through a lot of pleasure. Hmm? They sit back and smile at the flux
वो
of
गाना है ना कि रात भर का है मेहमा अंधेरा, किसके रोके रुकेगा सवेरा. सवेरा तो आने ही वाला ही है,
correct.
कोई रोक नहीं सकता उसको, लेकिन रात भर का मेहमा है अंधेरा. Only we should have a.
One stands in acceptance of where they are, then where is the scope for improvement of becoming better? Wouldn't they just stagnate? Good question. So, being in acceptance of where you are, the word acceptance is not uh, the word acceptance is not necessarily a cessation. The problem is we become victims of our past, and we become anxious about the future, looking at our condition. So, both your past and whatever you have done that has led you to where you are is out of your control, and the future is uncreated. So, an acceptance is almost um, an empathy, right? It's an empathy you you express with the past you, right? Saying you acted helplessly according to your nature. You did whatever was there to the best of your ability. Oh, maybe you're not perfect. That's okay. So that's where acceptance. It's gone. It's done, right? That's the meaning of acceptance. That you have no power to change what is done, but the scope of improvement is always there, because acceptance doesn't mean you're necessarily okay with how you are. You're okay with the fact that you're here today. You're okay with the fact that you're here today, because no change can be brought about immediately, and you are largely influenced by what is called prarabdha, your nature. So Acceptance is understanding that this is a marathon. Acceptance is understanding that you are running against yourself, not against anyone else. So it's not necessarily to outrun someone else, but rather to become a better version of yourself every day, right? It's not so much to judge yourself vis-a-vis how far ahead someone else is. It's to understand that you've been on your journey and you're here today as a result of that. Does that make sense? We will not stagnate until we reach perfection, absolute perfection, right? But as the Bhagavad Gita says, Shanai Shanai, slowly, slowly, gradually, gradually, take the steps forward. You have to be patient with yourself. You have to be empathetic with yourself. Yes, you have to push yourself as well. Rakeshji asks, to become introvert is part of nature or can it be adopted? See, introvert or extrovert, we don't necessarily mean in the colloquial sense of, being outgoing or being reserved, right? When the world talks about an extrovert or the world talks about an introvert, usually the person in the middle of a party is an extrovert and the person standing quietly, not saying a word, is an introvert. That's not what we're talking about, right? You may have an external expression that may differ. You may be a quiet person by nature, you may be a loud person, the center of a party by nature. That doesn't necessarily change. When we talk about becoming introvert in a Vedantic sense, we're talking about what's going on within. We're talking about your thoughts, right? We're talking about how you relate to the world, how you view the world. So you could be truly introvert in a Vedantic sense and still be very extrovert in the eyes of the world, right? You're the actor on stage. So this goes back to chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, beautiful verse of Lord Krishna. He says, Lokesmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta mayanaga jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. If you have a lot of desires, you're automatically extrovert. Means your thoughts are always chasing the world. And as you reduce your desires gradually, you become more established in knowledge, in Sankhya, you become introvert. Right? So it's a journey which you automatically will fall into as you grow, as you gain knowledge. So what he's saying, uh, observe the play of pleasure and pain to become introvert. He's saying use it as an opportunity to gain knowledge, because knowledge is what will turn us from extrovert to introvert. Knowledge is what will, asking questions, being inquisitive, being curious, trying to understand. These are the traits which will turn us from being like a chicken without a head, running around chasing something in the world, to one who is settling in on the inner journey. Are pleasure or pain necessary to be introvert? Generally, for a lot of people, see, it's not necessary, but it's almost like most people have to go through painful experiences to become reflective in life. Otherwise, until then, they think sab changasi, everything is good. So pleasure and pain are not necessary in an absolute sense, but for the bulk of people going through certain difficult experiences teaches them a lot in life. It makes them more appreciative of the mechanics of life. Otherwise, it's an immature worldview. But as he says, the wise learn from the experience of others. If you're wise, it's rare, But if you're wise, you will not necessarily have to go through the same pleasure or pain. You will gain that insight from experience itself, from the experience of others itself, through an observation. Swamiji recounts his Swami Bhartasarthi. He recounts his the time when he was deciding to get into Vedanta, and he was quite successful. He had a good job. He had a good family business. He had a very good education and this and that. So things were set for him. Had he continued in his line, perhaps he was into shipping line. So must have been a multi-millionaire, maybe billionaire by now. I don't know. Especially if you look at other big companies like who have come out from Chennai side. So very entrepreneurial family. But he says that something in him made him question the experience of others. He looked at the he says, I looked at my uncles and aunts and this and that, I saw the kind of life they are experiencing. Yes, there was a lot of success, there was a lot of money, there was a lot of pleasure, there was a lot of fame and following, but was there happiness? So he learned from the experience of others. He was looking at the experience of others and the kind of changes they've been through in their life to make a decision about his own. He went introvert, and he, in fact, went completely introvert, the kind of life he chose for himself. So you don't have to necessarily go through, a lot of experiences to become this introvert. Thank you. Can you please elaborate on nature? If there is something that one is, then how much control can one have, or does it change? Yeah. Sorry. Can you elaborate a bit about nature? If there is something that one is, then how much control can one have? Does it change? Very good question. Are you still here, Sri Lakshmi? Yes, you are here. See, there are two forces that act on you. It's called prarabdha and purushartha. Prarabdha is the result of your past. Prarabdha is the result of your past. It's what makes you what you are today. And purushartha is that force, that unit force, which will help you bring about changes in your personality. So one does not have much control over their prarabdha, but one has complete control over their purushartha. Right? I'm rushing through this because this can take an entire class in itself. But essentially, what we're trying to say is that you are a victim of your past, but you are a creator of your future. But you can't take right turns. If you're trying to turn, that turn has to be gradual. Otherwise, there are jerks. Otherwise, if you try to change too quickly, you might crash. So whatever change you can change your nature, you can change your personality, you can change the kind of desires you have and what you seek in life. In fact, that is the whole idea of growth. But that change has to be gradual, right? So you have to be patient with yourself, you have to be understanding with yourself, especially if you've lived a certain way for years and years and years. You can't wake up one day, attend a few weeks of Vedanta class and expect monumental change in yourself, right? So you have some control, but again, in the Bhagavad Gita he says, Nigraha kim karishyasi. What can restraint do? Nigraha kim karishyasi. What can restraint do? He says, Swabhava, your Swabhava forces its expression. Nigraha kim karishyasi. You can't suppress your Swabhava, right? So that's why, in fact, one of the first directions in the spiritual journey, we are told, is to pick what is called your swadharma. You have to pick a course of activity, you have to pick a field of action, an arena which is suited to your nature, your swadharma, your own nature, your inherent nature. So you have to understand your own nature, you have to acknowledge it, you have to understand your own limitations and choose a field of activity aligned with that nature, and thereafter give it a direction you want to give it. Gradually change. Does that make sense? Okay. If there are no further questions, we'll conclude today's class and we'll see you again the following Monday. So have a wonderful day, have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you so much for attending. Hari Om.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank
Hari
you. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you.
The class
Thank
was
you.
wonderful
Hari
today.
Om.